council meeting. Especially, we'd like to welcome those of you that are going to be receiving awards tonight for your good service and citizenship and everything else that you've been involved with. And bet you're glad summer's here, huh? And then when we get to the end of the summer, the parents are going to say, we're really glad school started. So, well, we're glad you're here. It's going to be a fun evening, and we appreciate every one of you for being here. We'd like to open by we're going to have a word of prayer and get started with that. Mark Christian, I've asked Mark Christensen to offer the prayer, and then we're going to have Bill Rosema is going to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. We'll go to that point.
Our dear Father in heaven, as we come before thee to start this Tree Mountain City Council meeting, we are grateful for the community in which we live. We're grateful for our neighbors and our friends and all those who help protect and serve us. And we're grateful for all that thou hast given us. Please bless the council this evening, that they can understand the decisions that will be made and that they can use their best judgment to make these decisions. And bless us that we can have safety as we travel home. And we say these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mark and Bill. Appreciate your willingness to help us out this evening. We'd like to introduce to you our some of our city manager and council, those that help us out. We've got Sean Warnke over here, to my left, and then Wes Seastep, Councilmember Wes Seastep, Councilmember Connie Archibald, Lyle Vance, myself, Lyle Holmgren. Brett Rohde has been excused. He's out of town tonight, so he has to be excused. Council member Rick Siemens, and our recorder Lindsay Nessen, Mark Christensen, our assistant city manager. Let's see, I don't see Chris here. We got our, just so you know, we got our assistant or our temporary fire chief, Chris Gothard, and then police chief, Dustin Cordova, who might come in a little bit later. Let's see, then Paul Fulgham and Sarah Mormon. We want to welcome, like I said before, we want to welcome the youth here and all of you who are here just in attendance and to be with us. We're glad you're here with us today. Let's see. Council, we have declaration of conflicts of interest. Council, is there anything on the agenda tonight that's a conflict? Okay. Approval of the agenda.
I'll make a motion that we approve the agenda as written.
I'll second it.
Been moved by Connie to approve the agenda, and Wes is going to second it. All in favor?
Aye.
Approval of the minutes for May 16th, 2023.
Make a motion, we approve the minutes for May
Okay.
16th.
All
I'll
right.
second.
Been moved by Lyle Vance and seconded by Rick. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, this is the last one of these presentations we're going to have for the school year. So what we're going to do is we're going to recognize our elementary students from North Park and McKinley Elementaries and Alice C. Harris for their efforts to just be good citizens, for looking out for their friends and their teachers and doing the right thing. And so with that, we're going to ask you to come up, and then we're going to ask you to kind of stay up here because we want to get a picture of you. And we'll go to that point.
The most important thing, where's the cards to?
Cards are way
Good sugar cards. I just wanted to know where they was to see whose friend I can be.
Okay, so I'm gonna call you up here and then Lindsay's gonna give you, we got a little certificate for you, a little card for you. Twisted sugar, so cookies. Cookies are good. All right, here we go. Aubrey Oschenbein, is that how you pronounce it? Sean Jacob. Sebastian Jimenez. Alina Hess. Ethan Jacob. We'll make sure they get their certificates. McKenna Lonnie? McKenna Lonnie? Okay, now can you tell me how you pronounce your name? Anna Lonnie. There you go. Paisley Christensen.
That's awesome.
Bailey Christensen.
Isn't that so good?
Emmett Mauer. Ruthie Hawks. Benny Dove. J.C. Odell.
J.C. Odell. Nevi, how do you pronounce that? Nevi Wynn. Adrian Logan.
Adrian who?
Logan. Adrian Logan. We'll make sure these, they get their certificates, and those that weren't here for us tonight. And we need to get a picture. So this is like the most favorite part of the whole thing here. Be with these
Squeeze.
Kind of squeeze around everybody. There you go.
Okay.
Ready? 1, 2, 3.
We'll give everybody plenty of time to take pictures. Oh.
That was awesome. Thank you.
We want to kind of recognize our principals, Principal Wendy Dunham that was here with us this evening. Thank you. Okay, we have some years of service that we're going
I better
to
give him a minute, Lyle.
give them a minute. Don't be so impatient.
Yeah.
Settle down.
Lyle, it's
Settle down. You're welcome to stay.
Mass exodus.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks for coming. Is this a pre-vacation year? Okay. All right, let's see. Go ahead, Paul. Yeah, I'm ready. We're ready.
So this is for Alan Corbett. Alan works at the wastewater treatment facility. Alan came to work for the city in 2008 when Lazy Boy closed its doors and left the city. Alan's forte is doing maintenance, pump maintenance, working with pumps and motors, other mechanical equipment. Alan gets along well with others, believe it or not. He enjoys serving the citizens of Tremont, always loading compost. He's one of our key compost loaders when people come down and purchase compost, assisting with snow removal and helping out other departments 24/7 when there's a need. In his spare time, he likes taking pictures of trains and spoiling his grandkids. He's passionate about his family, trains, his church, and talking to people. Alan's dream vacation is to take a vacation do an Alaskan cruise. Now, I threw in there, if he goes to Alaska and he loves trains, he's got to do the Denali train ride. First, you got to stop at Skagway and ride that train up to the pass. And then you got to ride the train through Denali National Park, if they still call it Denali. I can't remember because they changed the name of some of those. On his bucket list is to restore his old Ford Mustang. Was that one of your dad's or
It was mine.
is yours?
I've had it since I was 16 years old.
And if he ever won the lottery, his or either Lynn's dream is that he would buy her a new home and get her a new home. I don't know if that's his dream or her dream.
That's hers.
But when Alan retires from the city, he plans to continue working in his shop, which is his father's old shop, and to spend more time having fun. And Alan's been a pleasure to work with, and I can't believe it's 15 years.
I know, that's the way I am too.
Wow.
Learn something to go afford that house.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alan.
Payment on the new house, yeah. Better not start that rumor, man. Or shutting. We gotta go. Thanks, guys.
Let's see, Rosa, I get. Rosa-
Not here.
She's not.
Not able to make it.
Okay. We're also going to recognize Sarah Moosman, who works at the seniors. What?
Rosa
What did I say?
Mossman.
Rosa Moosman that works at the senior center, and she's been there for 5 years, so we'll make sure that she gets this.
Thanks, Rick.
Okay, next, with this part of the program, we're going to open up for public comments. This is your opportunity to address the council regarding your current concerns or ideas. We keep your comments concise. We want to hear what you have to say, but, keep your comments to the point. And time is now yours.
Pass it down. It's to go with his comment.
I'm Jeff Hode. I ask that those handouts go along with my short discussion here this evening. While my career was based on public speaking, I will need to read from notes to assure that I stay within the 3-minute limit and still provide all of my key points. This city council and other government entities need to make informed decisions in order to be effective in their positions. Such effectiveness is based on measures of effectiveness, both pre and post the implementation of any strategy. Not only do you need to measure, but you need to measure the right things in order to define the problem and see if the strategies are effective. You thus need to direct your staff to gather the right data. An example of this would be to look back concerning your creating paid firefighter and responders over the past few years. You only measured the caseload and then determined that paid responders were needed. Given that measure, has the caseload gone down? That was not the right measure. Instead, I trust that you were trying to improve the medical response results. Were they improved? Have you performed any measures of that? Or are you only assuming that creating these paid positions and increasing the public's taxes was effective? If so, that's sad and avoids finding out if the strategy was effective. Now you're proposing to increase the police force and taxes based solely on a ratio of officers to the population, which guarantees no lessening of crime and its effects. You need to better define the problem so that you can make an informed decision on your strategy, and you have a qualified police department that can help you with that. Let's look at the data to see what the crime situation is in Tremont and what has happened over the past 4 to 5 years. This is where we look at the handouts. The population has grown tremendously. In fact, nearly 75% of the county's population growth last year was in Tremont alone. Now, please look at the crime statistics. From this, you won't see any correlation between the population growth and the crime level, which would not support any increase in the number of officers. Yet there is more to the story, and you need to hear that from your police department. With that information, there may well be justification for an increase in officers. A ratio of officers to population is not a good approach. For example, see the chart on the populations in Burley, Idaho and Tremont. We're about to pass them in population, even though they were far larger than us 50 years ago or even 20 years ago. However, their crime problem is huge compared to ours. My wife worked in the courts there and then with the Idaho Supreme Court, and she knows a lot of what's going on. She's there right at this moment with her 102-year-old dad. So why is that? They have a very different culture there, where the criminal element has moved in. We don't want that here, yet the city continues to massively grow the population. I would caution you that we may see a huge increase in crime here as you continue to change the culture here. Thus, I encourage you to make informed decisions concerning your changing the city. All of this necessitates your transparency, and I encourage you to be transparent with the public. Share with us the data and facts, and show us that you are making effective decisions that you will measure. Lastly, I anxiously await your transparent response to my question at your last meeting on why you promoted such a huge growth in our population. Webster defines promote as to contribute to the growth or prosperity of, and that's what you've done. Why? Thank you.
I'm short. Christy Boca, Tremont. I come here for one really big reason, and that is, yes, to thank Chris Gothern for his work as interim, if that's what it was, police chief. Fire, thank you, fire. I knew there was something, I just went in an ambulance ride, my head is scrambled. Police chief, fire chief. I appreciate his service. He is working full-time. I admire the fire department a lot and the EMTs a lot. Jeff brought up a good point that I didn't know what he was going to say, had no idea. Has adding additional personnel changed in response time? I sat out at the hospital for 2.5 hours waiting for an ambulance 2 weeks ago. And my husband kept saying, why? She can't walk, she can't talk, she can't move. What is taking so long? No one can answer that question. I don't know whether it's the hospital's fault, because, yeah, they're behind the times, or whether it was response from EMTs because of, I have no idea why. So I appreciate Jeff's comment. Has adding additional people made a difference? 2 weeks ago, Wednesday, I would have said, crap, no, made it worse. I've had additional rides. I hate to admit that, but I have. And the response has been fantastic. This time, however, the hospital kept saying, we're waiting for the ambulance to get here. And, that's a long time for somebody to wait in that type of a condition. So I don't know. Worth looking into. Jeff brought up some good points. I hope you will take it for food for thought and really look into it, what's going on. But for Chris, I admire him. I've known him for many years, and he's one heck of a good guy. Thank you.
Christie, hang on just a second. What, follow through with this? What happened with the ambulance?
So there's really two sides to this, right?
Yeah,
So there's our response from the time that we get notified from dispatch to the time we get to the hospital. But the hospital's got their own policy on how they determine who's critical, who's going out. If we have multiple ambulances out, because our number one priority is to the city. We always work with the hospital because, you know, they're in Tremont, and the citizens that, or the people that go into there are part of the community here. But our number one priority is always gonna be to the city of Tremont, to ensure that there's a 911 call, we've got an immediate response. The way the hospital works, if we have multiple ambulances out, they, not us, the hospital will determine the criticality. They'll say either this patient can wait until another ambulance gets back into town, or no, this patient needs to go right now. So I don't know of any case where we've had to wait, or our guys have been waiting for an emergent transfer for somebody that needs to go, that's life or death, from our hospital to down there. We've always been able to find coverage for that. So I'm wondering if that's something on the hospital side where they said, this one can wait based on what we're seeing. It sounds like, though, that what you're saying is pretty critical, but that's not our call to make on how critical the patients are at the hospital or how fast they need to go out. When they page us and say, hey, we've got a patient that needs to go now, we respond. We'll find resources.
no, I agree with Chris. So whatever the hangup was, it was a little bit on the intense side. And the hospital kept saying Tremont can't come. Tremont can't come. So I don't know what the truth was, Chris, and I trust this guy.
I would like to have the conversation with the hospital.
That's okay, I've already got a call in with them. They're doing a complete review of the whole 9 yards because I did not like the way anything went down. Well, neither did anybody else that was with me. But he's a good guy. That was my point. He's a good guy. Thanks.
Thank you, Christy. Dustin, while we're kind of talking about this, let's kind of discuss a little bit about, the police and kind of where things are at. If you could maybe just come up and give us a little report on that.
I also have a handout for you. So to his point, I agree, and I'll just address that real quick. It's not ideal to assess staffing based on population size. It is a standard. It's not the best standard in the world. With that said, my job is to make sure our citizens are safe and our officers are safe, and the biggest and most paramount thing is that we have at least 2 officers on duty at all time. We can't do that. And unfortunately, the statistics don't show everything, and some of the crimes we've seen are unprecedented in this community within the last year. I mean, we're familiar with the shooting incident, other situations, and sadly, a lot of this doesn't hit the news, is we've had attempted home invasions with a person with a knife, and one of my officers confronted that person alone. And this is all within the last 8 months. We had some individual we stopped after a hit and run incident where he ran someone over. He fled. We were able to locate him. We made an arrest and he had 2 bombs on his person. These are major crimes. These are first-degree felony crimes. And my fear is our officers are taking on those incidents alone, and it's just not safe. And we've gotten lucky for a long time. I don't want to be lucky. I want to make sure we're doing things. Go ahead.
I just need to point out, he's saying this for your sake, Jeff. I mean, we get these reports. We spent hours on this, going over reports, and we understand why we're doing what we're doing, or we wouldn't do it. Sure.
The public doesn't hear this. I agree with the chief, and I understand it having run a state law enforcement agency, but that's not the justification that the public's getting.
So
What they're getting is the ratio.
Exactly, but these numbers are being gone through on a public basis. These numbers are in these meetings. You can pull them up anytime, 24 hours a day, and see it anytime you want to see it. The numbers are
You have
there.
them right in front of you. It doesn't show anything.
I can't understand these numbers,
Go to the second
but I can
graph.
understand the numbers that we're getting.
I'm sorry you can't understand them, but they're right there, and he has all the data, which is what I'm trying to encourage.
we see the data, then we make decisions.
And that, and I get your point, Jeff, that the idea, and we are making a concerted effort to get this information out, whether it's on social media, in the papers. We're trying to get this information out to people so that they can understand why we're making this decision to increase our police department and improve public safety, from this standpoint. If you kind of, you kind of alluded to it a little bit, some of these other places have some of these situations where they've got some serious crime, in other areas and up and down the Wasatch Front or whatever. Our goal here is to, my professional career was as an extension agent. So I worked with farmers, and I worked with farmers who had serious weed problems in their fields, noxious weeds and the whole. And there really is a kind of a correlation between the idea of a farmer who gets some bad weeds started in his fields and lets them go. And then all of a sudden, it's not just that field, it's the neighboring fields, it's the neighboring farms and everybody else. And those noxious weeds just start to spread. In a kind of a way, we're looking at public safety sort of the same way. We want to make sure our officers are safe. That's job one. We want to make sure that our officers are safe, but we want to make sure that our public is safe, and we want to, this idea of, noxious weeds, let's just say, drug dealers and things like that, as they're coming in, as if we've got the, we've got the police, we've got the police force that can handle dealing with some of these more sophisticated drug dealers and things like that. We need to be able to have we want to keep them safe. We don't want them going into a situation by themselves, a dangerous situation by themselves. And just to do that, we've got to be able to increase the numbers of officers, just so that we can keep them safe.
Lyle, on last week's report that anybody can pull up, it's on the Tremont Police webpage, they had 197 calls. Divide that by 7 days in a week, that's 28 calls per day. So that's 1 per hour. Then you gotta remember, you gotta take in vacation,
Sick time,
military leave,
training.
training and all that, where some of these guys are somewhere else. That's why we're trying to bring our.
But your point is well taken. I think that the point is, what you're trying to make, if I understand you right, is we need to make sure that the public understands that this is the issue.
Right.
This is what we see this every week. We're up here and we hear these reports, we hear this information. For me, it's every day. I hear about this, and Dustin and Sean and I and Mark, we talk about this on a regular basis, and so do the council members come in and meet with them. So we have that information, but you're right, the information needs to be getting out to people so they understand why we're doing what we're doing.
How much more can we do besides social media?
Well, I think that, I think that there's papers, and there's the paper, and there's the, well, we have two papers. We've got an online paper, and we've got the Leader. There's ways we can get this information out.
That's what I'm after. I'm actually trying to enhance the mayor's and the council's credibility with the public, that you are making.
We appreciate that.
decisions, because that's not what's coming across.
Yeah.
At the meeting that I was at prior, where you talked about this, the whole conversation was based on the ratio. In the newspaper, it's all based on the ratio. None of what you just shared is coming out to the public.
Yeah.
We need to do a better job of that.
And we are.
Well, and I understand, and one thing to understand is the city's got limited resources right now, and that's part of what we're up against. I would love to have someone personally just assigned to do PIO stuff. But we all have 3 different jobs, and my challenge to community members that are showing up is to help us spread the word, be part of that solution, not part of the problem. And if you have some platforms or ideas, run with it. I mean, we'll give you the information you need to help us advertise that. but I think we can use all the help we can get.
Yeah.
So,
We appreciate your comments, we really do. And over time, we've appreciated your comments, so Christie, we appreciate your comments.
so on to positive news, we did get that grant for the police department. I just want to give you guys a little bit of information on that. Essentially, the grant will help us fund an officer position. It's for a 2-year period. We have someone in mind for that position, and this is just to give you the information as we visit that down
Why
the
don't we talk
road.
about that and just toward the end of the
Okay,
meeting?
towards the end?
We'll cover it in more detail.
Okay, did you want me to cover the SWAT stuff? Do you want me to do that later?
Yeah, at that point, let's do that. Do it
Okay,
then.
so later? Mm-hmm. Okay, we're good then?
Yep,
All
we're
right,
good.
Cool, thank you, guys.
Thank you. Bill?
Yeah, I gotta put my 2 cents in.
Okay.
My name's Bill Rosema. Moved here a couple of years ago. For those of you that might not know me, first of all, as a citizen, I'm in full support of adding officers to the department. Proper prior planning prevents piss poor performance, and that's basically what the mayor said. We're getting a lot more people in this town, and even if it's a small town and it didn't get up here, nothing ever happens in Mayberry until something happens in Mayberry. I'm not a cop, never been a cop, retired Marine, but I know law enforcement is really, really super busy with a lot of crap. Most of it, unfortunately, is domestics, as well as drugs and everything. But as a citizen, I need to be able to call the police department and have an officer respond if I need an officer. I tend to do that if I end up in a dispute with somebody in the neighborhood or whatever. Sometimes you need somebody, a professional that's neutral to keep a situation from escalating. So I rely on the police department as a backup to keep me calm, to keep my neighbors calm, to settle anything that might come up or might arise. We need plenty of officers, and you gotta have a team. They gotta have backup. There's no reason an officer should confront one person with a knife or a gun or whatever in a situation by themselves. That shouldn't happen. You gotta have backup. Takes teamwork. Marine Corps can't do a damn thing if they don't have teamwork, right? So I'm in full support of that. And the reason I came here tonight, though, was I've noticed a couple of drones in the air. And that bothers me, especially when I'm in my backyard and there's a drone hovering over my backyard. They got cameras. That's how they navigate, And, it's happened to me a few times where a drone's hovering over my backyard and I'm standing there. I'm like, who is this person? Where are they at? What the hell's going on here? And I was told by somebody at dispatch that there's no law against flying drones. So I'm here tonight to ask City Council to come up with an ordinance against flying drones in residential areas. Imagine sitting in your own backyard and sunbathing or whatever, doing whatever you are with your family, and you got a drone surveilling you, basically. Casing the neighborhood. It's a great way to case the neighborhood. I know there's disorderly conduct disturbing the peace. You can hit them with that, but it would be really nice to pass a law against that if we don't already have one, so that it gives us some kind of recourse. And I'm asking, can you guys enlighten me? Is there anything?
We'll have to bring it up with Dustin and our city attorney but I don't know the rules of drones.
I haven't heard of it either.
Is it over your property?
Yeah.
So directly over so imagine your fence line and there's an invisible line going straight up there.
Yeah.
Is that where the drone is?
Yep.
Okay, then that would actually be prohibited. I just pulled it up, it's 7662-206. Basically, it says it prohibits the person from operating a drone over private property when the private property or any portion of the property is not open to the public. So I do believe it'd be a violation. So you could call us if it's over your property.
Okay.
And then we can do our best. That's the problem though, right? We have to prove it's over your property and we have to identify the operator of that. And do you know who? Do you have any idea? You don't have to put it
Well,
out publicly, but
Yeah, well,
we can talk after this.
yeah, I confronted the one guy. He came over private property onto church property. You look right out beyond my backyard is the church ballpark,
Yeah.
the stake center down here. So they're over their private property, and then my property and the church's property, which is private property. And I followed the drone to see who was operating it. And I said, "What are you doing?" I can't remember the conversation completely. It's been a little while ago, but I told him, I said, "I don't appreciate you flying a drone over my property." And they said, "Well, it's not against the law." And I said, "Well, that doesn't belong in the neighborhood, residential areas. It just don't." And they said, "Well, it's not against the law." And I said, "Well, I can notify law enforcement if I need to, you know." But they ceased and they stopped, which is great. But then there's been another instance where somebody was in the church parking lot flying a drone up there, and they didn't come over my property per se. Last year, there was a drone that flew over my house and down the property line. That was the first one I noticed. He went all the way down the properties, and then he come back, and he's over my property. He's going back and forth along the tree line down there. And I walked around the front of my house, and there he is in the middle of the street wearing an orange vest, and I confronted him on it, what he was doing. And he said that he worked for the city, and they were mapping out sewer lines. Well, the sewer lines are in the street. So,
Okay, Bill, why don't you and Dustin get together and you can get into this a little bit more. We got some other business we need to attend to, but please take a few moments and meet with Dustin and you guys can cover that. Hi, come on up.
There we go. I would like to propose potentially.
Your name?
My name is Brianna. Brianna Dyson. Yep. I would like to propose the idea of a dog park in the city of Tremonton. My whole entire street, I kid you not, whole street, there is a dog, multiple dogs, typically roughly an average of 2 dogs per house, all the way down, except for one house that has a cat. And then there are some houses that have both cats and dogs. There are so many in our neighborhood, and there are so many in this town, and they have so much pent-up energy, and including myself, I have 2 dogs as well. But they have a lot of pent-up energy, and some people don't walk their dogs, some do. But I did some research, and there's some scientific articles that I accessed, and some of the benefits of dog parks within communities is that it can result in greater positive feelings towards the neighborhood, enhance a sense of community, and also, in some cases, social capital, or even sometimes monetary, depending on how it is gone about. It also can improve safety because pent-up dogs with pent-up energy can become aggressive and attack sometimes. Not all, but there are some that if they were able to release that energy, they're a lot calmer, helps community members feel safer. They're not running around in the streets because there are also a lot of people who just leave their dogs out in their front yards, and when I'm walking my dogs, they come and approach them, which normally is okay, sometimes not okay. And it also reduces unwanted behaviors such as excessive barking in neighborhoods, which can be an issue.
So Brianna, where do you live?
I live in the Sandalwood complex, or Sandalwood
Okay.
Sandalwood Acres.
Acres, yeah. The subdivision, or kind of subdivision. And I understand that definitely monetary wise, that is something that would need to be an expense that would need to be paid. But I'm wondering, is there already land that is being unused in Tremonton that potentially has the capacity to be used to build a fence around, dig up have a large land of dirt with an enclosed area? Typically, in the articles I was reading, is that a half acre to 2 acres is good. If you have too small of an area, it can lead to frustration. They don't get to run around enough, and then that can lead to dog fights or just too frustrated of dogs that don't get their energy out as well. But there is one in Brigham City, a dog park in Brigham City. I believe that they're only on a quarter of an acre instead of half an acre, and I've been there before multiple times. That's been good, but at the same time, that's about a half-hour drive out, and it is hard to plan an extra hour and a half, 2 hours into our day just to get my dog out there, or dogs, depending, to get that excess energy out, because dogs can wear out other dogs more than a human can wear out their dog. A few ideas. Granted, I am aware money is always an issue, or it is something that needs to be addressed. Some ideas, potentially, that I had for ways that the park could maybe fund itself more could be, there could be rentals for the park for certain, like, dog birthdays. I don't know who celebrates dog birthdays, but I hear a lot of people do. I personally, I don't know, give them a toy, but you could have dog training sessions there, educational sessions, pet portrait sessions for those who do that, or even like fundraisers for dog bandanas or pet treats, like homemade pet treats and stuff like that. Another idea that I am going to propose is potentially if in a corner of a current park that we already own, if there could be a dog run put there, that's just like somewhere that dogs can be enclosed, not running around our current parks, which is okay. It's okay, but it's better to have them in a fenced-in area where they cannot disrupt others, like children playing, or even some kids who are just afraid of dogs, that they're not approaching them. We also could do like a timeshare-like thing where certain hours of the day, that area of a park enclosed could be addressed for that purpose.
All right.
Okay.
Well, thank you. I appreciate those comments.
Where's the one in Brigham? Just out of curiosity.
It's next to a vet. The vet owns the land, and it's next to the vet clinic. I don't know the name of the vet. It's by that big train station.
Oh, okay.
Like,
Oh, yeah.
there's a
bad
house with a huge metal rooster, and you just turn on that road, and it's just right there.
Yeah.
So when you take your dog there, you just take it inside the gate and say, throw frisbees and he just runs and all that. No other dogs. Never got into a fight or nothing like that.
With my personal experience, I haven't had one at that park. I lived in Provo for a while, and they have a really good dog park there. But there were a few fights, but there are also rules and regulations posted outside that have certain mandates, like they need to be vaccinated for rabies. You cannot have aggressive dogs present. I know I read one of the signs, one of the signs before I came in, but that is what I can remember. And then another idea that some parks have done is having a small dog versus a large dog area. So there are two separate areas for.
Brianna, would you if Mark can go out with you, and could you share with Mark maybe your phone number and a way for us to contact you and that kind of thing? We don't want to
I understand.
divulge your phone number in public, but maybe Mark can get that from you.
Okay, sounds
And we
good.
appreciate your time.
Thank you.
We are.
So maybe we can invite her to stay or.
We did
contemplate trying to incorporate a dog park into some of these parks. But these parks are storm drain basins, and part of the storm drain basin is meant to actually clean water. And so our engineer was worried about feces and it actually polluting the water before it is released into the waterways. So it is something that we're actively trying to contemplate.
Yeah. Okay, maybe we can talk about that a little further and then keep Brianna kind of in the loop a little bit so she knows what's going on. Okay, I think that's all our public comments. New council business, discussion and consideration of approving the April financial statements. Council, do you have any questions on any of that?
I looked through them. I'll make a motion, we approve the April financial statements.
I'll second that.
Been moved and seconded by Wes and Connie. All in favor?
Aye.
Discussion and consideration of approving the April warrant register.
I'll make a motion, we approve the warrant register for April.
I'll second.
Moved by Lyle Vance and seconded by Rick. All in favor? Say aye. I think I got a unanimous aye on that one. Discussion, motion passes. Discussion and consideration of adopting resolution number 23-31, ratifying the mayor's signing of a cooperative agreement between the Utah Division of Forestry, Fire, and State Lands and Tremont City for the city's participation in the wildfire suppression cost assistance program. Chris, can you kind of give us a little update on that? Is that, and then we'll.
Yeah, so these types of agreements exist for cities, between cities and states, the state, so that should there ever be like a large wildland fire, some of that cost is absorbed through the state so that the city wouldn't be responsible for it. But part of that, to make sure that that can happen, so there's three different categories. There's the prevention, the mitigation, and the preparedness that has to happen. So, for example, for us, we've got some mitigation plans that we're trying to do now, to where we go out and ensure, so we have to do like 50% mitigation. So we'll go out and we'll do like controlled burns, things like that, and then we do training for all of our folks. So all this stuff goes into this package, and the way it works is if we're doing our part and say we have a large wildland fire or something potential like that in the city, which we don't have a lot of that potential here, essentially the state would then cover the costs for the most part of those incidences. So it's beneficial for the city. It takes away some of the liability, I guess, but there is a requirement on our part to go out and do those mitigation efforts. And so that's essentially what this is. It's an agreement with the state. So.
You have any
Do these
questions?
every year, right? It's a
Yeah.
deal?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's sort of like an insurance policy.
It is, it's exactly what it is, yep.
Yeah.
So, yeah, there's a determined amount that we're supposed to put in as far as resources, and it's not just necessarily going out and doing like prescribed burns, but when we go out and do like weed control, things like that throughout the city, those hours can be counted as mitigation towards that. So right now we're pulling together the numbers for it. We're getting the hours that have been spent spraying weeds from the city, and then, our efforts that we're gonna do. We got a couple controlled burns, so then we'll reach our part of this agreement, and then when that's all said and done, if something were to come back, say in the summer or late summer, we had a big, large fire, then the state would help cover that cost. So, but you're right, it's like an insurance policy.
I swear I read somewhere that we've been doing this since 2017. This is just a renewal, an
Yeah.
annual renewal agreement.
Yeah, so it's nothing out of the ordinary for us.
Okay.
So,
Any other
Any
question?
more questions for Chris?
I think so.
Make a motion, we adopt resolution number 23-31.
I'll second.
Been moved by Lyle Vance and seconded by Rick that we ratify the signing of the cooperative agreement. Let's see, Wes,
West Side.
Connie Archibald, aye.
Lyle Vance, aye.
Rick, aye.
motion passes. Thank you. Discussion and consideration of adopting resolution number 23-32, reaffirming the appointment of Dustin D. Erickson as city attorney and approving a professional services agreement with Danes and Jenkins LLP for Dustin D. Erickson to serve as the Tremonton City Attorney. Sean, do you have anything to add to?
No, it does include a increase in wages. I can't remember the last time that we actually increased his wages. He's been with us since 2008. He does both the civil and the acts as the prosecutor. So he's served us well.
How much is it going up?
$10 an hour, his hourly rate.
And what was he getting paid?
125, so it'd be at 135.
I'll agree for that raise. You know,
I'll make a motion that we adopt this evening resolution number 23-32 in regards to approving the professional services agreements for Dustin D. Erickson, serving as Tremonton City Attorney.
I'll second it.
Moved by Connie, seconded by Wes.
Find it up.
Let's see, Connie, why don't you start it off this time?
Connie Archibald, aye.
Lyle Vance, aye.
Rick, aye.
West Side.
Motion passes. Thank you. Discussion and consideration of adopting resolution number 23-33, formally appointing Christopher Wells to be as the new fire chief, Tremonton City Fire Chief. Chris, you could stand up and say, hooray. All right.
How come he's not? We don't have him zoomed in to,
Yeah, we ought to.
Probably driving here.
oh, you think he's on his way?
No, he's not leaving till Sunday.
Oh,
He's
not
coming
till
out-
Sunday.
He's
Okay.
driving here starting Sunday to bring a load of stuff.
Maybe he's watching. Hello, Chris, welcome.
We, had the opportunity to sit in on the interviews and very impressed with him. I think he's going to be a great addition to our community, bringing his whole family up here. That it's going to be really neat. I don't think his wife has ever been to the West before. Is that right? She's
Well,
kind
she
of a
come with
southern.
him
Yeah.
She came with him that
She
one
came
time.
No, she came up, but she's not. She's
before then.
from Florida, so it'll be kind of an interesting change for her, but that'll be good. All right.
Well, I'll make a motion that we adopt resolution 23-33.
I'll second.
Been moved by Wes and seconded by Rick. Lyle, do you want to start it off?
Lyle Vance, aye.
Rick, aye.
West Side.
Connie Archibald, aye.
Motion passes. Well, thank you, everybody. That's our business for this evening. Let's maybe kind of review some of the calendar items coming up. Sean, do you want to?
Actually, Mark-
what you got here for us?
Mark, do you want to
Yeah,
talk him through it?
Farmers market just happened for this month, but this Friday is the second Friday, correct? So second Friday stroll downtown Main Street. The businesses stay open a little longer. They put out some good deals, so trying to get more activity in life in downtown. Paydays will be on July 21st and 22nd. Plan on the 22nd in the morning to help with that. And then there's two more.
We've got-
I'll update on the Main Street project if he wants. But I thought this was kind of fun. Walker Kessler, he was like the third best rookie in the NBA this last year. And he's doing the Utah Jazz, Junior Jazz player appearances. And so he's coming, if you have grandkids or anybody who would love the Jazz, it's at the fairgrounds on Saturday the 10th from 3 to 4. It's interactive, he signs autographs, he plays basketball with the kids. So that'll be a lot of fun.
That's going to be great.
And on Saturday the 24th, all day at Midland Square is our Midland Square Chocolate Fair, and we have over 40 artists already signed up for that, and some of the categories on like pretty much professional artists there. They make sure it's all there.
Yeah, they are cool. I go down there and I just think, I'm gonna fall in that hole, you know, all they make things. It is neat.
On July 1st, we're inviting everybody to come to the farmer's market and participate in the, Christie, this means you, participate in the watermelon eating contest.
Come down and be the judge, Christie. Be involved. You want to? Come
Yeah,
on.
we're-
You'll be the, I won't be here, but you can take my place and be the judge.
Then why do I want to judge?
I don't know. You can throw a big piece of watermelon if they're not eating fast enough. I don't know.
Anyway, that's on July 1st. That's, the farmer's market's such a great thing, a great community program and brings people downtown and it's just one of those really favorite things we do. We'll also be doing free hot dogs, so the city council, you can blame me on this one, but
That was fun.
we're going to cook hot dogs for everybody on that day. Last year, I think we did 504 hot dogs. I couldn't believe how many people. Anyway, we did all those hot dogs. We're going to try that again so right around the 4th of July. Anyway, that's all I've got. If anybody would like one of these little flyers, come on up and grab one after the meeting. Is there any unfinished business? Sean, looks like you want to talk a little bit about the septic tanks.
I thought we could revisit the septic tank issue. We've talked about it before, but I think I have some more information to provide to you. And as you know, Council Member Vance asked about it. And the last time we really talked about it in great detail was in July of 2022. And you might recall, but we had the health department came and did an education and a presentation. And this is just some excerpt, because this is how I understood when we left that meeting what we were going to do. And Mr. Mathis is Jordan Mathis. He's the, I don't know if his title is the executive.
Director of the Health Department.
The director of the health department. So it's, he's the director of, it's Cash, Rich, and Box Elder. So I think it's those three counties that he's over. And so, and what the health department does applies to all three, so I think that's notable. But he was very vital in the process, and certainly in this meeting. But we talked about that, we needed to stay together and work with the county and the health department and the city. I talked about the issue of, when we have a development application before us, that's the time to exact the improvements that we need to service that development. And Mr. Matheson went on to say that he was confident that that the health department and the county could work together to find some solutions, but it was going to take time. And then Councilmember Vance talked about meeting with the county, the city, and the Bear River Health Department. And so that was essentially what occurred. Jordan acted as the point person, since one of the commissioners, Jeff Scott, was on the board of the health department. He reached out to Jeff, and so the mayor, Jeff Scott, myself, Jordan, the technician who oversees the permitting of septic tanks, and Scott Lyons all got together and we talked about the issue. I think they were very receptive of it, and that started us down the process of creating ordinances, or working with them to create ordinances. The other issue, and this was one of the questions that came up as we talked about septic tanks, and could we essentially charge an impact fee if someone was going to connect to a septic tank. This is an email. I know it's hard to read. It's in your packet if you want to read the whole exchange, but essentially, and I followed it up with a conversation over the phone, but essentially, this is a excerpt from Marcy from the Ombudsman's office. She's an attorney, a land use attorney, and they help guide cities and property owners through questions related to land use and help to mediate as necessary. But anyways, the question is can we charge an impact fee? And if the person is installing a septic tank, and she essentially said no, because there is no impact. So, essentially when you exact something, you can exact it equal to the impact that they're having, but since they're not impacting the wastewater system, you can't charge the impact fee. And once you permit them, they essentially become an existing deficiency, and then the city becomes responsible, for bearing that connection at a future time, as far as not being able to charge an impact fee. So there's a window of time when it's, and it is when you're issuing a development permit to make the exactions. So if you go to the next slide. So that said, we worked with the county, the mayor and I, went to several planning commission meetings. I had the opportunity to actually comment on the county ordinance, and you can see some of my red line comments back, and for the most part, they accepted those comments. So essentially what the ordinance that the county adopted related to septic tanks in the county is, if you could scroll down, this is just the ordinance itself. You can see that it was adopted, and Exhibit A is essentially the standard that's applied, but I've simplified it to explain it with the next slide, which is essentially if there is a land use application that's filed with the county that is located within the municipal annexation policy plan, then the developer essentially needs to file a notice of intent with the city for annexation. And so it essentially puts us in a position to be able to evaluate, if we'd like to annex the property. If we don't annex the property, then they go back to the county and they can process their land use application with the county. So.
Doesn't it matter how many units are in the phase or the development as to how that distance, or am I thinking of something else?
You're thinking correctly, and that's the county, or that's the health department. I'll get to their standard that they adopted here in a moment. But I think one of the issues here, because these aren't necessarily perfect solutions. In order for us to annex the property, it needs to be adjacent to our municipal boundary, and so I think that's somewhat could be a barrier in this case. But depending on how big of a development and the land values and different things like that, there's possibilities to annex property essentially. So the next slide, if you would, Lindsay. So this is the health department. Again, Jordan sent this out, and I had a chance to provide comments, which again, they were very gracious to accept a lot of the suggestions here. If you would go down to, you can just see this is that they adopted the standard, and this is essentially the summary of the standard. If you would go down. I would just say that their purpose is to protect and promote public health, prevent disease prevention, the creation of nuisances, and prevention of water pollution. You might recall we talked about all those issues on our July 2022 meeting. And this standard applies not only in incorporated or unincorporated, but also within city limits. So if you would, this is where that standard comes in, where they would essentially be required to extend the sewer line rather than just connecting and creating septic tanks. But essentially, if you would, let's go down to the next slide. If you would scroll back up. This is going to be a little hard to read. Thank you, Lindsay, for blowing it up. So if it's an individual building lot and they're within 300 feet of a public sewer, then they need to essentially petition the city to connect to that sewer. They won't issue a septic tank unless the city essentially says that, we don't want to serve them. So The other issue is, and again, this isn't, whether it's incorporated or unincorporated, the standard applies. So this is the multiplier. So this is any subdivision that's proposing a certain number of lots, you multiply those number of lots by 150 and see what the distance is to the sewer. And if it is within, that multiplier, they would need to connect to the city's septic tank, or pardon me, sewer system. So let's go down and take a look at how this would apply, both standards. And it gets a little complicated when you're layering multiple standards and ordinances from different entities. But the first one, this is 35 acres, just south of I-15. I think everyone knows the Greg, it's the Freeman Farms, Gary Mattson developed the property. So this is 35 acres right adjacent to it. He came and visited with the mayor and I about city services. So, I measured what I estimated to be where the sewer line is, and this might not be exactly right. It's for illustrative purposes. But essentially, as I measured from a straight line from the edge of that subdivision up to Rocket Road, it's 1,300 feet. And it might even be closer because as Jay continues to develop the property, there'll be sewer closer than that. And so let's just say it is the 1,300 feet, then essentially he could develop 9 lots before he would have to extend sewer lines and lift stations. But I think the most likely outcome in this scenario is our incorporated limits is right adjacent. It's on that north property line. And it's hard to see, but our city limits are right there. So the county's ordinance would probably kick in first. And if they apply to develop under the county would tell them that they needed to file a petition for annexation, and we'd get to evaluate, if we wanted to annex the property. Let's say we didn't want to annex the property, they would still be, unless we refused to serve them, which, they could only develop 9 lots, essentially, without having to extend the sewer line. And again, I think we become more in control because we can decide, do we want to annex the property? And do we want to provide services to them, which is what I understood the issue to be. So hopefully that provides a little bit more information about where we ended the issue.
Talk to you about that multiplier. So you got 35 acres. He can put in 9
lots
in
with
35 acres.
without connecting to the sewer.
And if he wants to do more than that, then
He has to,
the county's saying you need to connect to the city.
the health department is,
Excuse me, the
yeah.
health department.
And
That's great.
yeah, and realize these just came out, so there's going to be, the planning process is you use your best organizing foresight, and then there's some corrective hindsight that applies, as different scenarios and variables come up that you didn't anticipate. And so we just need to watch and see how they apply the ordinances. But I think we accomplished what, we talked about that July 22nd meeting, and we've had great partners. And this actually just finally came about and was adopted. That is the health department. I just got notice. I think they adopted it in March, but Jordan just sent it over to me this past week. So anyways, I thought it was a great outcome, and we'll continue to work with our partnering agencies. From the county's perspective, what their general plan is they want development to occur within the city and have more rural areas, in the county where there's no services. And the health department is very interested in people being connected to sewer systems because of the health concerns. So anyways, that's where we're at to date. So.
I've seen five different developments where farmers are knocking out 10 acres and putting a street in. They're coming in everywhere.
Yeah. And this isn't perfect because, you know, it just, I think what it does is it respects the city's annexation policy and again, tries to encourage people to go to the city for services and try to encourage people to do, to connect to the public sewer.
Good.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
You want to just continue on with your storm drain? Did you want to have a discussion on?
Oh, sure. Absolutely. So,
I'm sorry. Hold that thought. Mark, did you want to talk about branding at all before do you have anything to add to that situation?
No, we're pretty close to having a store created online for the employees so they can order all sorts of like stationery or shirts or promo items or anything, which would be nice. It should be pretty easy for them. Sarah and I and Sean are working on the street furniture, and we're gonna have a bunch of the logos, the TC logos made for the outdoor garbage, the decorative cans out up and down Main Street, and that'll save a ton of money because those only cost like $5 or $10 each instead of buying all new garbage cans. So we'll be putting those on, and then we have the grant to buy the benches and bike racks for it. So that's kind of the updates right now.
If you've driven up and down Main Street, you probably noticed the flags that were flying, our nation's flag plus the Tremont City flag, and that's just brand new, the city's flag, and it's kind of cool looking. Of course, it's right there, but yeah, that's good. That all you got? Sean?
So we engaged a landscape architect, Landmark Design. We've used them on several different projects to lay out conceptually what these park storm drain basins will look like. We did this in part for trying to come up with construction estimates so that as we move forward, we can program it into our capital improvement plans and understand sort of what the costs are going to look like. There's potential to use PL 566 funds that the canal company seems to have available for flood projects, and so storm drain basins are a flooding project that are eligible, as we understand it. But you can see essentially. This is the 13 acres right along BR Mountain Road, and you can see where the basins will be located. And you can also see in this 13 acres, conceptually, it shows some pavilion, playground, pickleball, and some playing fields. So this would be the largest park that open space that we have when developed. And so we'll probably develop, as Chris develops these cost estimates for construction, he's also going to be developing different phasing and how we could start to phase in some of these improvements. I think from a recreation side, I think there's a great demand for pickleball. We think this is a great location because it's close to some different neighborhoods, but it's also positioned such that that noise wouldn't be an issue with the pickleball. So,
Is this something we could take Brianna's idea and do something with the dog park in a section of that over there?
well, we contemplated trying to put it into the basins, and that's when the issue arose with our engineer, where he felt like that. Yeah, so I think what we're trying to figure out is the best area for that. And we're continuing to try to evaluate, where we could do something like that. But I think it's high on, I think Zach's really supportive of it, our Parks and Rec director. So Mark and Paul, feel free to jump in on any of these parks, storm drain basins. This storm drain basin is along I-15 at the end of Harvest Village. It's just south of the cemetery, right before you go under the county road. I forgot which road it's called in the county.
1,000 actually, not 600.
Oh, okay. 6,000 West. We call it First East. So it's, this is 5.5 acres. It's actually probably a little bit more than 5.5 acres as a comparable. I think North Park is right about 5-6 acres in size. And you can see where the basin's going to be. And, around it will be a walking trail. And there's a walking trail around all of these parks. This also would be connect to the Central Trail. And so you see that stubbing into it. There will be, the developer's required to put a pedestrian crossing from the other side of the canal that will connect into this park. So there'll be access for the residents on the west side of the canal. And other than that, this is going to be more of a leisure park. Probably won't be programmed with any formal sporting events, but it could provide some practice fields for coaches. But up above, it's going to be more leisure. I think there's what's contemplated here is like ping pong tables, I believe, cornhole, I think might be there. And of course, there'll be a parking lot there, some pavilion. And this will have a little bit of a square with some impervious area with trees. So should be a nice park. This also incorporates, too, I think one of the features here is mounding up some of the areas around the playground to incorporate a hillside into the playground area so that kids can climb the hill and roll down the hill. And so should be a nice park when it's done. And then lastly, this is the River's Edge Park, again, storm drain basin. The perimeter, there'll be some on-street parking here. They increase the right-of-way to accommodate parallel parking along the collector road. And this will actually have a trail that connects, it's a sidewalk width trail, so it's 8 foot. It's an 8-foot sidewalk that runs from the Holmgren Nature Trail trailhead to this park as well. And you can see this will probably be programmed to some degree, or potentially has the ability to do that, but it also would serve as practice areas for different coaches for different events. But a playground and, just a variety of different modules you can see in those circles. So basketball court. I think what Zach intends to do as we get closer to actually constructing these is to reach out to the public and have them provide some input to see what kind of amenities they would like to see within these neighborhood parks. So this is essentially 8 acres of open space. It's compared to Ginny Stevens as far as the turf area, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mark, but I think it's essentially that same amount of green space. Obviously, Ginny Stevens has a parking lot, but excluding the parking lot, I think it's pretty comparable as far as the lawn area. So.
Just continue right along.
Keep going, okay.
Yep.
So this is just an update on what's happening with developments. We have actually quite a few developers who are working on moving towards recordation or working on continuing their application. I think most notably, and I need to get back with some of these. It's been busy enough. But the Bear River Manors, that's the redevelopment of the hospital, the nursing center, or So that's, they're trying to work towards recording, and these two are essentially ready to record. Jay's reached out to me and is working towards recording potentially his River Valley 8 and his Harvest Acres or Harvest Villages Phase 1.
Senior Center.
But these are the ones that,
Oh,
Where
we're
the-
just
where
trying-
the-
Look
we're
at
just
the
trying to
rezone.
decide where, exactly where that was.
so yeah, maybe scroll down. This is right along Fourth West.
Yes, 400 West,
Yeah, right there. So.
Main.
So these two developments actually adjoin one another, and so the developers have been working jointly on extending some of the infrastructure and also having a common storm drain basin, which makes it nice because then you consolidate and you have a little bit more open space for the residents to recreate in. Two different developers, and one is actually a site plan where it's, the developer's not subdividing the property into units. He's going to hold all the units. The other one will be subdivided and sold as individual homes or individual units. And so we talked a little bit about the road. These two frontages will extend to the final width of Fourth West, which will essentially be a collector road width. I think we've talked about it, where there'll be a center turn lane and travel lanes in each direction. The city will need to work with Bingham at some point in time if the road's going to be extended all the way to Main Street with that cross-section. And also to the south with the trailer park right there. There need to be some cooperation there.
It's okay with zoning, the way they've got them
Mm-hmm.
apartments in there.
Yes, it is zoned. It's a central development. I think it's central commercial development's the CD zone. It's what we typically refer to it as, and that has multifamily.
Townhomes.
They are. So if you scroll up, you can take a look at what those, that's Envision Homes. That's going to be the one closest to Main Street.
Sawyer.
Or pardon me, Sawyer, but it's owned by Envision, not Visionary Homes, but Envision, and then that's Danny McFarland's, and that's the one that's further north. So if you would scroll down a little further. And then Envision Estates, this is the same developer that is doing those townhomes, would like to rezone property. And it's shown in yellow right there. It's going before the Planning Commission. If you scroll down a little further, it's currently zoned R110. Our future land use plan, which we're working towards adoption. You might recall that we're right now evaluating the traffic, the land use and the traffic, and just making sure that our transportation network will support the land use. So at any rate, it'll be adopted here in the upcoming few months. But it affirms, our future land use plan affirms that R110 zoning, which is what city staff recommendation will be to the Planning Commission, is to keep that as R110 zoning. But the public hearing is scheduled for June 13th. You know, we've shared that message with the developers that we feel like it's best left with its current zoning, considering what the adjoining land uses are, and they, you know, they have the right to make application and request that of the Planning Commission. So that's where they're at. So I was just going to tell you also, so we have current planning, which is, you know, current applications working with individuals on the development of the property, but we also have long-range planning issues that we're working on. Told you a little bit about the future land use plan, where we're at. You know, we got the results back on traffic modeling. It showed that Main Street, that section of Main Street from like 4th to 3rd East, you know, is going to struggle. And so we're trying to reevaluate our future land uses to reduce some of that traffic to the best that we can along there. We also have a future road out on the west side of the city. It's on property that's not annexed into the city, but they suggested that that be upsized to a arterial road. And so that's much easier accomplished and accommodated. And so anyways, we're rerunning the models. We're also revisiting the land use. So that's kind of where we're at there. The moderate income housing report, we have a report that's due on August 1st. And I just thought, we talked briefly about this, but the state continues to evaluate and amend the state code as it applies to providing moderate income housing. There's penalties for noncompliance so for fiscal year 2024, this report that's due August 1st, there's no financial penalties imposed for noncompliance. The following year, it's $250 a day for noncompliance. And if you're noncompliant for 2 years in a row, then it jumps to $500 a day for noncompliance. We're working on an accessory dwelling unit ordinance, which was one of our strategies that for meeting the affordable housing strategies that the state requires. And so we'll currently have a draft to review with the Planning Commission on June 13th. And we're working on trying to establish a mortgage assistance program. And that's languishing. So we might need to find another partner to work with. So we're working with the Inland Port Authority and had a meeting actually last night with all the taxing entities. Met with the school district. They were there, the mosquito abatement, and just talked to them about what these project areas look like and what's going to happen, answered questions. I think we're going to go to the school board on July 13th, or 12th, July 12th, potentially, and talk to them a little bit more so they're informed about what the Inland Port is doing in Box Elder County. So I think that's really about all that I have. Other applications, I mean, we could talk a lot about planning, but there's just ongoing efforts and applications from lot line adjustments to business licenses, and the junctions looking at revisiting an application. I need to meet with them, but I haven't had time to do that. But that's something to keep an eye on. So that's all I've got, unless you have questions.
Thank you, Sean. Any questions for Sean?
I don't have any.
Okay, department head reports. Dustin, do you want to lead things off?
All right, I'll be straight to the point. We'll start with the grant. So we were awarded the grant through the Department of Justice. It's the Rural Violent Crime Reduction Initiative. We did find a statistical crime trend that allowed us to apply for that. That's the information you have in front of you. Page 2 is most important. That's just the statistical data. I won't get in the weeds with that. So in order for us to make this happen, we'll just need the support of the council. Essentially, it will allow us to contribute the money towards hiring another officer, which is something we're discussing anyway. It kind of helps alleviate some of that financial burden. I've talked to them. There's a ton of guidelines. I won't sugarcoat it. There's a lot of work involved, and we have to report a lot of data. We have to follow through with a lot of different sections, as well as do semi-annual and annual reports. There's a process on billing, all that. We'll take care of all that. The big good thing is that this will help offset some of the costs. The money can go towards salary only. It doesn't cover benefits. So that's where we're going to have the financial burden, something Sean can get into at another date. I think it's on the next agenda. So good stuff there. Any questions on any of that stuff I gave you? Or I just don't want it to come out of left field if we go and we talk about it and you end up voting on it. I just want to make sure you have all that information. So if you have questions, reach out. The other thing we're kind of working out right now is SWAT agreement, Sheriff's Office. This thing is not working tonight. We looked at all the options collectively. I'm just going to give up on it. They're the best option for us based on geographical location to our city. We did have that barricade issue last week. It went great, and the guy ended up surrendering before we had to utilize SWAT. Right now, we don't really have a standing SWAT agreement. I visited with other cities. I've talked to them. Cache County, fantastic. They're willing to send their resources if we need them, but there's going to be a response time delay. So basically, our best option is to create a team with the county, give them some assets and in the form of personnel with equipment, and then we would train together and we'd kind of have like a united MOU with them. They're on board with it. The sheriff's awesome. I can't say enough good things about him. Sean's going to help us work out the MOU and Dustin. That way we're covered. And the biggest thing is so we have something in writing that assures that we're covered if something happens, and they'll respond and help us out. So it's a work in progress. We're doing tryouts right now. We did our first round last week. We have one more on the 17th, and then we should be able to throw. They have a standard to meet for their PT and their physical fitness and their tactics, but we should be able to throw some people on that team, as well as myself, to make sure we have a SWAT commander position to help influence that team. Any questions on any of that stuff?
Council?
Okay.
Just a question. So you're going to be on the SWAT team as a commander? Or is that what you're?
Yeah, it's, I kind of have to be. They need someone to step up as a team lead. We've never had this before. It's historical for the police department and the city. So they just don't have the ability. Nobody has the experience needed to do that. My goal is to get in there, get things operational, get all the administrative and tactical stuff worked out, and then get someone trained up, hopefully a sergeant, and pass that command position on, so I don't have to take it on. But in the short term, I'll take it on.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dustin.
Yeah, no worries.
Thanks for all you do. Oh, let's see, Paul, do you have anything to update us on Main Street? Yeah.
Sewer line project's going, it's slow, but they had to get the gas company, had to loop up 2-inch line so we can go across. So probably within the next couple of days, they'll be starting crossing Main Street, which will be another big hurdle. Once they get through Main Street, things aren't speed right up through. And then tomorrow we do have our bid opening for our equalization basin on our central canal. And so I'll be bringing that to the city council for award the next meeting.
Can you scroll down? It's just so you can take a look at, these are the drawings. You can see what it's looking like. I think everyone knows where it's at. It's on the south side of I-15, just right south of that park we were talking about on First East. I think the main one's just the aerial.
And we will be having a pre-construction meeting next week on our road projects. And I'll know timeline on and where they're going to start.
This is on the
Chip seal and
1,000.
reconstruction. Yeah, chip seal and reconstruction.
What's your guess on that? What are you thinking? What's the time frame?
Well, their plan is to start on the chip seal around the 19th or 20th.
Okay.
19th is a holiday for the city, so I'm hoping it's the 20th. If not, I'll be here. And then I just got to work out the right schedule for the rebuild so we can keep away from the 24th and the county fair. So,
Yes.
No kidding.
Oh, that's for sure.
yeah. I think that's it.
Okay. Chris, do you have anything to update us on?
Not sure if you want me to come up there or.
I don't know if that microphone.
That mic don't work, you got a good voice.
All right. So recently we held interviews for 2 full-time positions that we have vacant currently. on the department. Final offers have been extended to 2 individuals, and their start dates will be the 19th of this month and the 21st of this month. And that'll bring our full-time staff back up to where we should be at 6.
Perfect.
Been working with Sean and Lindsay a little bit on the captain's position description. I think we've just about got that wrapped up. I included Chris Wells, the new chief, on that as well, so he's got his inputs on there. And then I believe as soon as that's finalized, we should be going out with those positions, so people can start applying for those.
So did you say, just so I'm clear, that the version that you sent to me includes his comments?
So I guess it sounds like the original document was his. I sent a copy of the original one that I had my inputs on to him, and then I sent him the one that you sent back.
Okay.
With your inputs, I said if you have any inputs or anything else you want to add or change for that, to make those changes. And then once that's solidified, we can go out there, post the position, and see what applicants we get.
Okay, so we just need to wait for him to respond, it sounds like.
Yeah, I'll touch base with him again. I talked to him about it yesterday and sent him all the information. I think it was late last night, so he might not have had a chance to get to it today, so.
Okay.
But as soon as that's done, I believe we can advertise those, start going through the process.
Is there three captains?
Correct, 3 captains. We talked about not necessarily just doing an interview, and I don't know if Chris talked to you about this, but perhaps doing some additional testing or some additional stuff that the candidates would have to go through, maybe a presentation on what they would come in and do as far as training, ensuring the full-time crews on each shift were up to speed on training. So just some inputs that they could have, just some additional, not necessarily screening, but provide them some additional opportunities to interact. So usually there's a testing process for all of that kind of stuff. So that would kind of be the testing process, whether they do a presentation or they come in and we talked about providing like a scenario on how they would, if you laid out a scenario, you've got a structure fire, these are your resources, how would you stage them, things like that. So it's additional opportunities for them to interact and kind of see where their skill set levels are. Make sure we're getting good qualified candidates.
Hey, Chris, can you just do a short description of the 2 guys you've just hired? Can you tell us a little bit about them?
So this worked out really good. So we interviewed 5 individuals. The 2 that we hired actually live within 5 miles of the city. So not only are they available for the full-time position here, but are much needed callbacks. So when we have additional resources needed, if they're not on duty, they can get here pretty quick because they're within 5 miles of the fire department. So the first offer was extended to Carl McBride. He also he's been running part-time with Garland Fire Department, and he does part-time down in Washington Terrace. He's got some experience already, but it'll be transitioning from his full-time job to this as his full-time job. So he did really well on his interview. He'll be starting the 19th. And then the other one, her name is Jade, and I don't know how
Benson.
Benson?
It's spelled
It's
weird,
spelled
but
a
it's
little
Benson.
different. So Jade Benson, she is a paramedic. She works at a hospital down south.
Davis.
Was that?
South Davis.
South Davis Hospital. She's familiar with transporting patients, so she'll fit right in when it comes time to doing like patient transfers from Bear Valley Hospital to another hospital. So I think she'll bring a lot to the table. And then she starts on the 21st, will be her first shift. So both local, and it just happened to work out that's how they were racked and stacked during the interview process is 1 and 2. They both did very well in their interviews. So I think they'll be a great addition to the fire department. To the community.
Thanks for all you're doing.
So we're happy to have them.
The light's at the end of the tunnel for you, Chris.
Yeah. Oh, we're doing good. So
Yeah, no kidding you are.
hired. new chief settled in. And
We appreciate all you guys, and everything you're doing for the city. It's fantastic. Let's see. You talked about the bidding on the equalization basin, council reports. Let's see. Rick, do you have anything you want to share with us?
Thank you for all that you do. All the city workers, you don't hear it enough, so thank you.
Truth and taxation timelines, where are we at with them?
So, actually, just before this meeting, I got an email from the auditor saying that the rates are ready. I didn't even get a chance to really look at the rates. But that said, in reading the body of your email, it sounded like we needed to adopt them by July 22nd or go through the truth and taxation. So the next city council meeting, we will have that on for formal consideration of what you would like to do. Right now, as you know, the tentative budget proposes a property tax increase, which I think you've adopted that tentative budget, and that's what we're preparing to propose again in anticipation that you're going to go through the truth and taxation process. And I just say that unless you guys want to redirect us, because then we would need to have our final budget adopted on the 20th if we don't go through the truth and taxation process, which again is what we've all talked about. So
Has anything changed with the budget that the last budget you proposed?
There's a few changes just because there's a lot of projects that it's all about timing, but all of the money was funded in our current budget, and so that means if we don't spend that money, it will roll over into fund balance, and we'll be able to appropriate the fund balance for those changes. But there haven't been.
not fundamentally, there's always little tweaks as we get more and more details. For example, Mark's just working now with our insurance premiums for property liability, so we'll have those, nailed down. There'll be a little difference, just nominal stuff. We're going to look at revenue again and see where it's at and see if there's some more revenue that we feel confident in. But fundamentally changing, new big projects, there's nothing like that in this budget. And we'll have, Mark and I are working on the memo, and it'll be very, hopefully descriptive. Mark has some great budget aids, so hopefully that'll help and aid in the process as well. So we'll be ready for the 20th, along with budget amendments for this fiscal year. Mark's currently working on that. As you know, we need to revisit this current year budget and make changes.
And that's the city's disclosures that you're talking about. I know, Mayor, you were talking about putting some type of disclosures together so the community would know why we're doing what we're doing.
Kind of talking, yeah.
Yeah.
We are. We decided to hold off on it for just a little, and I think we're ready to move on
Yeah.
now. I think we're going to put together, we've got some information, some visual stuff that I think will help.
We do-
I think the anecdotal type stuff would be very, very useful as well, so.
Yeah.
The thing that's concerning is the city has to disclose certain ways, which are very difficult to understand.
Mhm.
But when the mayor discloses, you can do it so that people
Yeah.
can understand,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
And
exactly.
we need to get that out. So
Well, we were going to do it the first of the month when we were going to do the newsletter, but opted to just hold off just a few days, and now I think we're ready to go.
Yeah. We have till August 15th. That's when thereabouts will it be the public hearing, so.
I think now's the time to start getting the word out. And
It is. I told Mark, we can't lose sight of the deadlines that we have to meet statutorily. We've got to have a tentative budget, and we've got to have the budget amended by July or June 20th. So, I've told Mark we've got to hit those marks. And then there's time after, you adopt or you disclose what you're finally going to do to start that process. And that's what Mark's going to do along with the mayor. And I think they've already started to some degree.
And then the final decision is made after that point.
So it won't be really till September till we have a final budget adopted is what we anticipate. Yeah, so it's a little, we have a few more months ahead of us.
Okay. Thank you.
Connie?
The mayor has asked me to meet with a group called Just Serve. And so tomorrow night I'll be meeting with them. And one of the questions I've already talked to the individuals that are in charge of that in our community, the Iversons. And so I'm going to meet with them, but I've already had conversation with them. But there is a website of which you could go if you wanted to do service. There's a website that has lots of ideas for you. But on September, we all know what September 9/11 means to us. And so this year, they would like to put together a really powerful service project in our area. And so tomorrow night, they would like me to come with some ideas as far as what we could maybe do in our community to be a part of that. There'll be lots of stakeholders at the meeting tomorrow night down at the Public Works. I thought about beautification. We know that there's a lot of citizens there are some citizens that feel like our community needs to be beautified. And so there's beautification projects that we could take on, but does anybody have any ideas of things that they really feel strongly about, that service opportunities? I would love to hear that. Tomorrow night, going to that meeting, I'd like to be prepared with something, and I'll brainstorm and think, but maybe I'll circle and talk to some of you before the meeting tomorrow night. Also, I wanted to give thanks for those that were involved in Memorial Day program that we had. And the cemetery looked amazing, I felt, and the program was terrific. And so thank you, Mayor, for putting that all together. It was a powerful, I thought it was amazing. Is it Zach? Well, thanks, Zach. It was so good. Also, a shout out to police and the fire department who participated in our escorting into town for our state championship teams. Our high school's girls lacrosse and the Lady Bears softball took state championship. And as I called and asked for some support, some connection, the firemen were really good to come, and also the police helped with the escorts into town. It meant everything to those students and those parents. Yes, it was 1 o'clock in the morning. One of the times it was almost 1 o'clock. Wasn't quite 1, but it was so wonderful for those students to feel that connection. And so I wanted to thank you for that. The next school year, we just had our last citizenship awards tonight. I would propose that we continue that in the coming year. As I visited with the schools, they will still be focusing on being responsible, respectful, and safe in our schools. And so the next school year, that will be their emphasis, and their focus is continuing to help the students of our area know the importance of living that kind of life. So I would propose that we continue that for next year, and that focus will be the same.
It's a highlight.
I just think it does a lot with bringing our citizens into this room and celebrating all the good. Oftentimes we hear a lot of negative in this room, but I think it's powerful for us to hear the good. So I would propose that we do that.
Great. I'm all for it too, Connie. It's a good deal.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor? Could I, just to go along with what Connie said, we had the chance to go to Utah League of Cities and Towns, and, one of the highlights for me was the conversation about dignity with Tim Shriver. And so Mark and I sat and talked to the University of Utah president after, and, he said that, Tim's available potentially to come up here. So we've started that process to try to bring that presentation here. And if we're successful, then we would, do it as a kind of a regional, would invite the county, and would figure out how to involve as many people as possible in that conversation. But it sounds like he won't be back in Utah until the fall, and so we probably won't know anything until till later in this calendar year. But I just want to let you know that that's something that we're working to try to bring, to the area, because I thought it was a great conversation.
Excellent.
It was fantastic.
It was good.
Tim Shriver would be the presenter,
Yeah.
That's what we are understanding.
and Tammy Pfeiffer, I think is her name, from the State Board of Education, will be presenting as well. She was part of that too. She did one of the workshops after. But we need that in our valley. We need to understand how important it is to act with dignity, and especially where we have elections going on, we need to know how to act. And I can say that it was so powerful that I don't want any part of anything other than acting that way, actually. So everyone gets to decide how they're going to be. But as far as I'm concerned, I will be acting with dignity through the process.
You know what, Lyle, I don't have nothing this time. I've appreciated everybody's comments, concerns, and all that, so I'm good.
Well, I do have, I'm attending some meetings the next couple of days, this Utah Growing Water Smart workshop that's going on over at Utah State. And, and it was really a good thing. I had an opportunity while I was over there. They talk about things like, we all know better. We all know this way it ought to be, but it just sort of came together. It resonated with me about, you got land use and you got water use, and somehow we need to mesh everything together so everything's in balance. And it was just a good discussion we had. There's a professor over there. I used to work with her. Her name is Kelly Cope, and we talked briefly about the idea of maybe having her come. Her specialty is water-wise landscaping and learning how to do it right, so it looks good and all of this kind of thing, and hoping maybe we can get her over here for maybe a workshop or something like that, maybe in this room, and have her come and invite the public to come and learn a little bit about water-wise landscaping. But that's all I got, other than, Sarah, I forgot to, do you have anything to add? Okay. We just appreciate all of you very much. Appreciate Jeff and Bill, appreciate you coming and commenting. It means a lot. And we are truly trying to implement some of your ideas and everything, and because they are good ideas. And maybe I might even give you a call and get your take on some things. But with that, we have one more motion.
I'll make a motion, we adjourn.
Motion by Rick. I don't think anybody's going to disapprove, so thank you, everybody.
You read your emails from the chief?
Show up every once in a while.